So our mission actually covers 5 countries. So it's southern Germany from Munich down. It's all of Austria, the German-speaking part of Switzerland, the northern part of Italy, and Liechtenstein is actually in there as well, but we're not allowed to proselyte there, so it just kind of is thrown in there. Everywhere that we serve speaks German, but each country has a bit of a different German. Austrians are very sing-songy. Germans are just like the normal German that you hear, but it's southern German, so it's a bit different than in the north. And Swiss people don't even speak German. I don't even know what it is. They speak Swiss German. It's totally different. It's totally weird, but it's beautiful. And Italy, the part that we serve in, they speak German as well. Something interesting about Switzerland is they have 4 mother tongues. So there's French, Italian, German, and Romanian. So there's an influence of all those languages, even in just the German. Even the High German that we speak as missionaries, like my German's very French because it's just so highly influenced from the other languages. I can speak more about Switzerland just because I spent more time there and I understood more at that time. I mean, German attendance, my first ward in Germany, we had like at least 200 people. It was a huge ward. I always served in really big wards. Great attendance, lots of less actives, but that's just how it is in every ward. Lots of work to do. It was a huge city. We always had visitors, whether the sisters or the elders, there was always someone there. And then in Switzerland, they have 3 German stakes, and also they have a lot of branches and a lot of districts and also wards. So I served in only wards. I had the fortunate opportunity to only serve with wards, but my ward in Zollikofen was about 220. It was huge. It was right next to the temple, so we had French and Italians always there because they lived at the temple, and that's the temple district for all those countries. And then same in Zurich. Zurich was awesome because it's an international. Well, now it's actually an international ward. They just changed that. But it was nice because we always had so many visitors, so a lot of Americans. So I think if you looked at the actual ward and the amount of people that actually attended each week, it was probably about 180, which is still pretty big. But once you add in all the visitors, it was probably about 230 or so. I mean, obviously there were branches that were like 20 people or somewhere like 80, just depending on where you were. Their main religion is Christianity. Their church, it's just like in Utah, but with Protestant and Catholic churches. They're everywhere. So they are a very religious people. And they say that they believe in God, but they don't attend church. They'll go for Christmas and for Easter, but beside that, they just stay at home and believe in God in whichever way. They often say that they believe in nature. And that's the way that they worship is spending time in nature, which you can see with the people. That's just their culture. They're always outside. Something cool about the Bern Switzerland temple, actually some history about that, is Karl G. Maser. He actually was a convert in Germany, and he was such a missionary that they actually kicked him out. So he crossed over the Alps and came into Switzerland and started to like build up the church there. But it was actually because of Karl G. Maser that the church was built in Switzerland, and there was actually quite a few saints there. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but by the time the Second World War came around, they had to close everything down. They had like an emergency overnight evacuation of missionaries. They had to take all the missionaries out and send them back home to America. And the Europeans actually said that they felt quite isolated, like the church had forgotten them because they just took everyone out. It was just not safe for us to be there. It was just cool how that all worked out, how the temple was to come about, and that it was chosen specifically in Bern. And that the people were ready. I mean, the Swiss saints are so strong. A lot of them migrated to America, which is why we have a lot of Swiss people here. I think that says a lot about, especially the Swiss. They're very proud people. They're very proud of who they are. They're very proud of their nationality. And I think that it's perfect that there's a temple there. With the fall of the Berlin Wall, you can tell that everything was broken. The people were lost. They didn't know quite what to do, but actually, it's really interesting. It's really interesting. My trainer actually told me, we were having a discussion about the people when I was still in Germany, and she said, you know, you can really feel that the people still have something that they're holding on to. Because the German history is just so rich. There's so many experiences and so many tragedies that those people have had to go through. And you can still feel that pressure on them. Especially when you talk to the older generations. They really still carry that with them. And a lot of them are scared to hope. They're really scared to believe in God because they've seen so much throughout their lives that they've just lost hope. And And so to have a little 20-year-old girl come and tell them that there's Jesus Christ and they can hope in a life after death, and that you can be saved and all these things, they kind of just shut you down, because they're like, I've seen so much bad in the world. Like, who do you think you are, being 20 years old, can come tell me, who's had all this life experience? And that was really interesting to see them, like that such things that happened so many years ago can still play such a part on these people's lives. It was really incredible. So there's a lot of history there. That was like a ramble, but there is a lot of things about those people, a lot of historical events that shape who they are still.
The Alpine German-speaking mission, it covers all of Austria, southern Germany, primarily Bayern, and then to Baden-Württemberg, and then most of Switzerland, so the German-speaking parts of Switzerland. I personally was never able to serve in Switzerland, visa problems, but in Switzerland, well, the mission language is Hochdeutsch, so you'll be trained in the High German, and but you'll learn to understand any of the dialects where you serve. Primarily, there's the Austrian dialect, there's Bäuerisch, then Schwäbisch, and then you get into Schweizerdeutsch, which most German speakers count as a different language. It's, from my understanding, I can't really say too much, it's Old German mixed with some other stuff, and I had a companion who had just come out of Switzerland, and he tried to teach me a little bit, and it was just like, what are you trying to say? The hardest thing with the language probably is just learning to adjust your ear to all of the dialects. I mean, the more you learn of High German, the better it will be to switch from dialect to dialect, just because you have a better overview of everything. But, I mean, in my first area in Wien, they speak Wienerisch. There was one time where I heard there was 3 guys, and they started speaking just in pure dialect. And my trainer, who was only a couple transfers away from going home, he's just like, I understood maybe like 10% of what they just said. And it was, so, and there's a different dialect for every area you serve in, but in school they teach High German, so everyone will be able to speak and understand High German. So it's not too big of a deal. It's just, there are some areas that are a little bit more so in the boonies in the countryside where a lot of the older generation will only speak dialect just because that's what they're comfortable with. Each of your areas will cover a ward. The church is reasonably small, like it's pretty good. You'll switch between wards and branches. The wards usually run at about 150. It's probably about average active attendance. Please don't quote me on these numbers. I'm not the best at numbers, but I mean, they're going to be a lot smaller than pretty much anything you're going to see here. Well, yeah, a lot of the active wards will be about the size of your average student ward. With Austria, it's a little bit slower than Germany, I think. I mean, I haven't served everywhere in Austria, but from my experience, I served in Vienna, one of the really big cities, the biggest city in Austria. And then I served in Hagen-Halsbach, which is the least populated of our areas. That was a small branch. That was a cool area to serve in because that's where the church started in Austria. That's where they had their first baptism, so it was just kind of cool to see that church history there. A lot of older families had been in the church for quite a while. They're really cool. The growth is slower, like it is in most of Europe, but I'd honestly think that is going to change within the next couple of years significantly. While I was on my mission, I got to see an interesting change from, I guess what you call kind of the traditional way of doing missionary work to more of this, I don't know, the newer ideas that have been coming up. Switching and focusing, instead of having the missionaries be pretty much purely responsible for going out and finding people to teach, to working primarily with the members, to spending the time that we're not teaching with members, working to reactivate members and working with the active members to help them invite their friends to come into the church. Germans are very private people. It's not, I wouldn't say it's not socially acceptable, but it's very strange to just talk to a stranger on the street and just to start talking about personal subjects, especially religion, because that's considered one of the more private topics. And so for a strange American to just kind of stop you on the street and say, hey, what do you think about God? A little weird. Most of the time you get the response of, oh, I don't have time, I'm busy, not really interested, don't want to talk about it. Because it's just not really comfortable for most Germans. Whereas when they're talking to someone that's their friend that they know is a Mormon, they've kind of seen them interact, they have a greater opportunity to begin really talking about the gospel. And it opens doors. Of the people I taught, the greatest experience, or I should say the most effective experience in teaching, was one where the investigator was introduced to the church by a member. And those are generally the teaching records you find that lead to baptism, that lead to activity, which is probably one of the hardest things out there, is just keeping someone active. Because you're living in a world that, well, it ain't Utah. Religion's not a huge thing out there. I mean, most people in my mission are Catholic. It's kind of the Catholic central of the German-speaking world. They're born Catholic, they're raised Catholic. Most of them will, as they say, they'll die Catholic. But it's more of a tradition than anything else for a lot of the people out there. There's a lot of good people, and I led a lot of very, very faithful Catholics who are an example to me. But in general, I think it's kind of more of a feeling throughout Europe, is just kind of a turn away from active religion. And I'm pretty sure it just comes from the history of what the continent of Europe has been through the last couple 100 years. When you work with the members, you find those people who are interested but wouldn't respond, so to say, to just someone stopping them on the street. And I really think that's going to change how things work in my mission especially, and hopefully throughout all of Europe.